I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, the latest data show improvements in attendance across all phases, with 350,000 fewer pupils being permanently absent in spring 2023 compared to summer 2022. Our new expectations ask schools to appoint a senior attendance champion and meet termly with local authorities to agree individual plans for at-risk children, as well as using our attendance data to identify where to intervene early. We've launched the Attendance Action Alliance of System Leaders and have expanded attendance hubs and mentoring support.
I'm delighted my noble friend's voice has recovered. My Lords, last autumn, 2 years after the lockdown ended, a quarter of children were persistently absent from school, double the rate before lockdown. That means that 2 million children are persistently absent from school, falling behind on education, missing out on social education with their friends, and running the risk of falling prey to drugs and criminal gangs. There's something seriously wrong here. So what research has my noble friend's department done to find out the reasons for this worrying increase, which shows little signs of diminishing?
So my noble friend, as ever, asks a very important question. And if we look at the reasons underpinning persistent absence, of course, the majority of persistent absence is authorised, with higher than normal levels of sickness, particularly in the last autumn term. We're also aware of suggestions that parental attitudes towards sickness have changed, and parents keeping children home, whereas previously they might have sent them into school, and of course high levels of reported anxiety. But I think there's also something which we're exploring actively at the moment, which is those children who perhaps have missed so much education during the pandemic that their level of reading, for example, is not sufficient to engage properly with the curriculum, and that's something that we're also keen to address as quickly as possible.
My Lord. It's always a pleasure to follow the noble Lord Young and support his question. I think the answer just given by the noble Baroness is very insightful, and I want to ask her a question which might be sort of from the side, which is, could we get a message across to parents, particularly of those who have started to believe that working from home is the norm, that when they get up, they have to get their children to school?
Well, I know that the noble Lord will know that the relationship with parents is incredibly important, and he's right that there are, it seems clearer now more than ever that there needs to be great communication with parents, and there needs to be a high level of trust. We've prepared materials to support parents getting their children into school. The Secretary of State has just written to all responsible bodies, local authorities and trusts about the importance, including highlighting really good, clear communication with parents.
My Lords.
Minister, give us some guidance on what progress has been made in making sure that mainstream schools are identifying reasons why children are failing. Often this is neurodiverse special educational needs. What are we doing to improve the awareness of these? And I remind the House of my interest in this area.
Well, the noble Lord knows that we are working extremely hard, and in our latest publications, both in relation to the commissioning of schools and in our description of what a really strong trust looks like, there was a very big emphasis on inclusivity and making sure that children with special educational needs are well supported in mainstream education. But just to give the noble Lord a specific example, we're aware that in some areas children with education, health and care plans have high attendance as a specific objective on that plan. That's not the case in all, and many schools have suggested to me that it should be.
Some form of special education needs and disabilities accounted for 24.9 of all persistently absent children in the year to 2022. 100% attendance may not be possible for them, yet some schools offer awards and prizes to children who do have a full attendance record. Yeah. Does the noble lady, the Minister, agree this is discriminatory? It not only impacts their well-being, but perhaps impacts on their longer-term view of how they'll be valued in the workplace. What is government doing to ensure schools tailor their approach to take into account the needs of young people who cannot be there all the time?
I have to say, I think I understand where the noble lady's concern comes from, but actually when I talk to children, and obviously the children I meet tend to be hand-picked for perfection, but when I suggest to them that maybe not all their friends are in every day, what they tell me is they need incentives to come in, whether that's fun at the end of the day in terms of extracurricular and enrichment activities or reward schemes. Some of the best reward schemes I've seen are run on a weekly basis. So actually, I think addresses the point the noble lady raises, which is no child feels they have fallen behind so far that they can never catch up.
My lords. I've got to sort of declare an interest here as somebody who, as a schoolboy, regularly bunked off school. And my noble lords will be happy to know I went straight to the library and studied medieval poetry, so that was helpful. But one of the things, though, that I'd like to ask my noble friend, the Minister, could she give us some good practice examples and models of schools or academy trusts that have actually produced some really good examples of bringing the children back to school?
I find it hard to believe that my noble friend bunked off school, although obviously medieval poetry was the first thing that came to mind. In terms of examples of good practice, there's a lot going on around the country. One of the trusts that we work particularly closely with is the Northern Education Trust, who runs schools in places like Middlesbrough and Hartlepool and Stockton. I went to visit their North Shore Academy in Stockton, and for example, what they're doing there is identifying children where reading is a particular barrier to engagement, and then communicating when children start to catch up with their reading to the parents. So parents are then getting a good news story about their child at school, then encouraging the child to go back to school, and that in turn helps behaviour in the classroom because those children are no longer bored and potentially disruptive, and that's the kind of thing we're encouraging schools to get together and share best practice around.
My Lords, I declare my interest as Chair of National Society. Thank the Minister for visiting the North East recently. The Church of England have just published a Flourishing Schools document, which I know she has. Absenteeism does appear to be connected also to mental health and well-being, and there are particular issues around special educational needs. Could the Minister comment on the work that's being done to note the connection with mental health well-being and improving that to help with reducing absenteeism?
So the Right Reverend Prelate will be aware that we are rolling out senior mental health leads in schools, but I think it is really important that, and this potentially goes to my noble friend Lord Sewell's question as well, that we're clear where mental health is a genuine barrier for a child to be in school and where actually a child's mental health would improve if they were in school. And when I talk to school leaders, they say it is absolutely the exception that a child would not be better off in school even if they are experiencing anxiety or depression.
My Lords, 3 times as many children receiving free school meals are severely absent from school compared to those who aren't eligible. This puts the UK's poorest children at yet another disadvantage compared to their peers. What steps is the government taking to support these pupils? The government outlined plans to tackle absent rates 2 months ago. How long will these take to fully implement, and when will we get the first feedback from these programmes?
So the Noble Lady is right, and it is an area of real concern for us, but she may also be aware that there's quite a lot of variation, including between schools in very deprived areas, and that's why bringing schools together in attendance hubs so that those with a very similar demographic can share their good practice with those who are perhaps finding it harder to turn this is something that we're keen to do.